Welcome to Concerning the Spiritual and Art, a podcast exploring spirituality, consciousness, and the creative process. I'm your host, Martin Benson. All right, y'all, welcome back to the podcast. I have a beautiful episode for you today with photographer, artist, meditation and yoga teacher, Allie Lyon. Allie and I just hit it off right from the get-go. We are very much aligned and have similar experiences in relation to yoga practice and meditation. And so we really started kind of nerding out on a lot of that. We learned first and foremost a lot about how she sort of began this journey, not only as an artist, but like sort of her journey of spiritual practice. And we kind of went from there and talked a lot about some of these ideas that are related to not only being a creative person to making art, but really are just universal ideas related to the human experience. It was a very deep conversation about spiritual practice and art practice that I think people are going to love, whether you're an artist or not, because Allie has so much wisdom to share, such incredible like ways of framing certain sort of ideas that relate to like the limitations that we put on ourselves in relation to like our experience of being present, our experience with pain, our experience with creating something. We talked a lot about her photography process and sort of what that means for her and how it's related to her spiritual practice. She has such a great way of sort of like mirroring spiritual practice and creative practice that I think was super inspiring for me to learn about. But all in all, it was just an episode filled with so many little nuggets of insight and wisdom and just a lot to take away from it. And so I think all of you are going to really enjoy hearing from her. So here you go, Allie Lyon. All right, Allie, welcome to the podcast. How you doing today?
Good. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Doing good. I'm super pumped to connect with you. We were just kind of talking off camera or off record for a while. And it's just, we were going back and forth trying to get this podcast scheduled and, dealing with the time zones and life circumstances. But here we are. We made it.
Here we are.
We're doing the thing. And I'm super excited to share some space with you today. And we kind of connected through Instagram. And one thing I really love about what you do is not only are you a visual artist, but you're also a yoga teacher, a meditation teacher, a guide for people, spiritual guide for people. And I think all those things are really woven together into your practice. But I'm really curious. I think a good place to start is kind of like how that journey sort of began for you and brought you to sort of what you do today.
Yeah. Oh man, where to
I know
start?
it's big. We'll start with broad, but like maybe,
But
yeah,
it's good.
exactly.
It's good.
I was born on.
Yeah, right. I'm a Taurus.
Yeah, there you go.
It's interesting. I was writing about this the other day actually, and how I think some people are born with a very clear direction, and then sometimes, like for me, it's almost like the path found me in a lot of different ways, both through art, through meditation, yoga, and all that good stuff. But let's see. So around the age of 10, my dad gave me my first film camera, and I fell in love with that process of not knowing what you were getting. And I remember, and back then it was like you went to the store where there was a weird dark room in the back closet, and then they'd come out, and all of a sudden, like magic, you had your film. And I remember being, even as a young kid, just like really mesmerized by that process of like, this happened. You can't see, just like today, we're on our phones. We take thousands of photos a day, like babies, dogs, whatever else, just filling up your camera roll, right? Food, yeah, that too. And then it was so like just magic. You were like, oh yeah, let's see what came out. How did this happen? There was such a magic. And I think even from a young age, I was always really drawn to the invisible. Even when I didn't really understand that, but looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, that was always like part of what I enjoyed, was what you can't see. And around that time in my life too, I was getting these chronic aura migraines where I would see a lot of color. My vision would get distorted. I'd see a lot of white light, or it almost looked like TV static. And then sometimes I would faint.
Oh, geez.
I had been in the hospital a bunch of times, MRIs, CAT scans, the whole thing. And oh, your brain's normal. I'm like, well, this doesn't feel normal, right? It's
Mm,
like this neurological kind of misfiring, or, the vision brain connection, something was just
mhm.
not working.
Yeah.
And I still live with them now, but not as often. But was such a debilitating thing that ended up leading to this really powerful inner vision that has inspired my artwork, meditation, yoga nidra journey since. So it's
Wow.
really wild to um, I had this one experience. I remember I don't know, maybe I was like 18 or 19, and I was in my dad's house, and I had a really bad migraine, and I hadn't lived with him growing up as a kid. My parents got divorced when I was young. So I was only living with him for like a few months. So he hadn't really seen the impact of what a migraine can do.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
it's like you can't, no light, no sound. I just like locked myself in a room, and I just remember I laid down, and it like hurts to cry, but you want to cry because of the
Mm.
pain. So I'm
Oh
just
my
like sitting there,
God.
like in the dark, kind of just like shutting yourself out. In yoga. It's this pratyahara, which means sense withdrawal, right? So it's like
Hmm.
you tune out of the external noise, you illuminate the world inside yourself, whether it's painful or something else. For me, it was
Yeah.
about the migraine.
Yeah.
Um, but I just remember, and I was, my eyes were closed, but all of a sudden it was like this light color show of just like this. I still remember it to this day. It was just this wild, like emerging and dissolving of color and shape. And I thought that I was, that I had only been laying there for maybe like 5 minutes. And then I got up and went into the kitchen to grab some water or something. And my dad was like, are you okay? I was like, yeah, why? And he's like, you've been in there for like 4 hours. And I was
Oh
like,
my God.
what are you talking about? Like the
Wow.
distortion of time, and then just this big focus on inward seeing
Hmm.
just continued to spill out into everything I explored through, in college. I went to art school.
Yeah.
And everything I did was, one of the first assignments. It's all these little uh, pointers to the path, I think, for me, was like
Yeah.
that experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then one of my first assignments in school was take a photograph of nothing. And that still inspires me to this day.
Yeah.
Because I was like, this is everything I'm already moving through. Is like, how can I make the intangible
Mm.
tangible? How can I
Interesting. Wow. What an
this
interesting
internal
sync.
vision to life? Yeah. So
Yeah.
just really wild the way that if you're paying attention, which is a huge part of my practice and what I teach, is just the power of our presence.
Hmm.
And that spirituality isn't this like thing up on a pedestal that we only have to sit when we're on our cushion and in deep meditation, but you can weave it into every part of your life if you're really paying attention.
Yes,
So
definitely. I mean, attention is really like the currency of life. Like where your attention goes, that's where your energy goes.
energy
That's where
flows.
everything goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, well,
Yeah.
you can feel that. Like you can just feel that, like even experimenting on your own body. Like bring your
Yeah.
attention to like the tip of your thumb. And if you really pay attention to conscious, you can feel your energy
Yeah.
awaken there. You can feel your
Yeah.
heartbeat. You can feel,
Yeah.
warmth or
Yeah.
coolness or whatever.
Yes.
Like, so
Yes.
attention is the key, but what I think is so interesting about your journey, and it's like obviously you've had these like syncs, like all these, I feel like everything seems to, especially in retrospect, line up so perfectly to teach you the things you need to teach, to help you acquire the skills you need to have to do the thing you're currently doing right now, even if you're not aware
Yeah.
of it. But one
Exactly.
theme I think that I can definitely deeply relate to, that I think a lot of people can relate to, is this sort of way that pain or suffering can become a catalyst for deeper understanding or knowing of your true self. Like in your bio, I mentioned this like off camera that I really loved and
Yeah.
resonate to, but like you mentioned, like pain can become like a portal to beauty.
Yeah.
And for some people, like when you're in the middle of experiencing pain, like when you're in the midst of like a terrible, horrible migraine, like there, it's hard to tell somebody, hey, look at the beauty. They're like, shut the fuck
Right.
up. Like,
Right.
it's like
Oh,
when
for
you're
sure.
in the middle of it, it's harder to do. But ultimately, if you can do that over time, that's a good thing, to be able to shift your consciousness toward the experience.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, you can see how these things are teaching you something. And so I find that to be such
Absolutely.
a beautiful sort of lesson in life, to see
Mm.
that like the experiences that we have can become catalysts for great transformation, even if they're negative,
Yes.
quote unquote, negative
Negative. Right.
experiences,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so I'm curious for you, like had that experience kind of embodied through these migraines that
Yeah.
you've had, like
Yeah.
how do you, as like because I know you work with a lot of people, who are discovering themselves through meditation, through yoga nidra,
Yes.
through these practices, like how do you help someone see that for themselves? Like what would be like a tactic you might
Mm-hmm.
be able to like bring to someone who's dealing with a lot of pain? Like how can you help them move through that
Mm.
process?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question and a really important one. A is that, we are all human beings, right? So the way I teach is so much about the collage of our human experience. Like, I always view emotions as, instead of like that negative, positive thing, that like the attachment, the aversion, like, oh, I want to feel good in my body all the time, which is not really the case, but instead of looking at it as like, yeah, positive or negative, it's just they're different experiences,
Mm-hmm.
allowing you to just be more intimately connected with who you are and just the colors and shapes of your own experiences.
Yeah.
So instead of judging it as good or bad, it's more about through the lens of curiosity. And
Yeah.
just, I always say, like, can you give yourself compassion, and grace for just how much we can hold and feel at once? Because
Yes.
it's not only, even though, especially let's say you are going into, I mean, stillness too is probably one of the most challenging things for people to do these days, myself
Mm-hmm.
included. Um, the moment you try to become still enough, your mind is like the first thing to just flood your experience, right?
Yeah.
Because it's
Oh
like, I
yeah.
don't know what to do here. Think of everything from the past and the future. But also, when you're asking people, okay, tune into your physical body, start to pay attention, the loudest thing is going to be probably what does not feel good.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you can continue to stay with your awareness and notice, okay, well, what feels good in your body,
Yeah.
or where is there no sensation? And then you start to train yourself to become aware of those more subtle, quiet sensations, because the mind is always loud, the pain is always loud, but the heart and the intuition travels in this like subterranean, intuitive, quiet level, right? Where it's like,
Yeah.
I'm always here,
Yeah.
but you just have to sift through all the noise. And it
Yeah.
takes a lot of courage to be able to do that. So
Definitely.
it's like giving yourself the compassion, the time, the patience, which takes a lot of practice. Where I'm from New
Yeah.
York, like it, it's a practice, right? I'm not
Yeah.
always patient. Like,
Yeah. Right.
it's like, okay, I come to these practices because I need them, not because
Yeah.
I'm a master at them, right?
Yep. Exactly. I
So,
love it. Yeah.
yeah, I think something that's helpful, and in yogic philosophy too, there's the five koshas, or
Mm-hmm.
the sheaths, which is just coverings. It's not quote unquote like real. It's
Yeah.
just what we kind of think of as real. So it's the physical body, you dive beneath that layer, then there's like the breath and the energetic body, then there's the mental, the emotional, and then the bliss body. So
Yeah.
it's just this like constant, like peeling back an onion,
Yeah.
peeling back the layers of your experience to find your truth, right? To
Yeah.
find who you are on the inside, um, without all the masks or the noise, the pain that we think defines us,
Yeah.
um,
Mm-hmm.
but may just be a doorway, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that doorway into clarity or inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like to think of it as like a radical space of like openness, of allowing,
yeah,
like
yeah,
of like trying to like let go of the shackles of control, like to try to control your
yeah,
experience. But it's so
yeah.
freaking hard to
It's
do.
so
And
hard,
it's like,
and
yeah,
I
go
think when
ahead.
we're in pain,
Hmm.
the right away is like, how can I make this better? How can I
How can
make
it
this
go away?
better?
Yeah, go away,
How
go
can
away.
I make this go away? But
Yeah.
instead of just honoring, like, okay, and being with that feeling without always trying to change it, right? And I think
Hmm.
that's why pain is becomes that portal into beauty or wisdom or understanding, is because it's so hard to be anywhere else
Yeah.
when the pain is like taking up your full awareness. So you're
Yes.
kind of invited fully into that sensation, fully into the present moment where instead of resistance, right? What we resist persists. I always love
Yeah.
that quote. But
Yeah.
it's like what is it? What we accept changes most easily. So
Yeah.
there's this surrender, right? There's this letting
Hmm.
go and letting yourself experience sometimes discomfort. We
Yeah.
always want the positive, right? And it's like,
Exactly.
okay, how can we practice being in the place of the witness, right?
Yeah.
Not good, not bad, just neutrality in the heart.
Yeah, exactly.
A
And it's,
challenge.
but it is such a challenge, but I think the more you can like be able to be comfortable sitting with the craziness of your own thoughts and allowing those thoughts to run themselves around without like trying to
Yeah.
jump into them and drive them to a particular place, but allowing like almost like I love the metaphor of like a glass that's like filled with dirt and like shaking it, and like if you sit there and you just watch it, eventually it will, by just letting it be, not doing anything, just letting it be still, eventually all the mud and the dirt settles down and it finds its clarity again.
Mm,
So in a way, it's
love
like we
that.
got to like let ourselves sit
Let
and
the
let the
dirt sit.
chaos go and just watch it and find some entertainment and just
Yeah,
watching how ridiculous the inner workings of our
right.
minds can be. With it, I always try to bring a sense of humor to it because I just see the
Yeah, me too.
craziness. and
Yeah.
and then eventually though it does settle with time, and I think that's the hardest hurdle for a lot of people who are really
Hmm.
practicing or trying to get into these practices, is because
Yeah.
they want that clear state right away,
Mm,
but
yeah.
it's just not how it works. Like you have to work that process of
Yeah.
identification with what it
Yeah.
is that you might be attaching to, and then the constantly letting go
Yeah.
over and over again.
And the reminder too that I think we want it to be this destination, but it's not permanent, right? Like
Yeah.
we're
Hmm.
not going to be this like and the job of the mind isn't to be still. It's
Yeah.
like it's our mind's job to think. And I taught a meditation, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, about, you know, when your mind feels really busy, instead of being like angry at your mind for thinking or whatever you want to say, like maybe it's like, oh my God, my mind, like the churning, right? The waves
Yeah.
of thought. Can you kind of visualize them like your thoughts at play with one another? And how does
Oh.
your thoughts playing together, how does that shift how you witness what your mind is
Hmm.
doing? Like, what if
Yeah.
your thoughts just want to be playful and dance around, or they're painting together, or whatever it is you want to like visualize? But I just think it really depends on how we judge ourselves in those moments.
Yeah. Like
Instead of
just
like,
the
oh, my mind needs
reframing.
to shut off. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
meditation isn't about just stilling the mind and that's it.
Yeah.
It's remembering, forgetting. It's in the moment where you realize you went
Hmm.
off to some place totally
God knows
different and
where.
saying, okay, and then you bring yourself back. It's that moment of like
Exactly.
coming back again and again and again and again.
Exactly.
So
It's,
that's
yeah, that
it.
starting over. Like I think you probably know who Sharon Salzberg is, who's like a
Oh yeah.
really big meditation teacher, really
Yeah.
big in teaching like compassion meditation, meta
Yes.
practice, which
Yes.
is so powerful and important.
So
But
powerful.
she talks a lot about just like starting over again. Don't be afraid to
Hmm.
start over again, not only in this meditation, but in your whole freaking life. Just
That's
start
it.
over,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
real monkey. You can all like you always have the freedom to start over. It's just, will you allow yourself to do it?
Yeah.
I want to circle back real
Exactly.
quick to the pain thing, because I think that's really great advice about like trying to be aware of not just like the loud sensations that are
Mm,
trying to really bang the drum to get your attention, but
right.
just, it's like a kid. I think of like a kindergarten class, like all the personalities, and you got the kid who's like
Totally.
banging the drum in the corner, wants your attention. You're like, yeah, you need to attend to him, but like at the same time, you have to be aware that there's other voices in the room and there's other energies there, and you have to kind of be able to
Exactly.
curb your attention to these subtler spaces as
Yeah.
well.
Because their voices, they might not be audible, right? They might
Hmm.
be speaking with body language,
Sensation. Yeah.
with sensation, with not speaking is
Yeah.
also speaking, right?
Yes.
Like there's
Hmm.
these other ways. And I think that goes back to like my love for the invisible. It's like, well, what can we see that
Yeah.
maybe isn't so there in front of you, you know, like
Yeah.
what can you feel? What can you intuit with your senses and your heart
Hmm.
beyond the representational that your eyes can quote
Exactly.
unquote see, you
Yeah,
know?
because most of us, I would say a lot of people who can see, have the ability to see, whether they're born to be
Yes.
able to see or they've been able to keep their sight through life, like
Hmm.
we attach so much power to that one particular sense. And I think for
Hmm.
anyone who does have their vision, like I would say most of us attach a lot to that particular sense door.
Mm.
And I think a lot of times what I think yoga practice and meditation practice taught me is how to bring more equity to my senses, and
Yeah.
pay more attention to
Yeah.
the other senses, like, and not
Yeah.
relying so much upon just seeing, but
Totally.
seeing how like there's a whole feeling process within you, using all your senses at once to really fully know something with your whole body mind. And that's like a totally amazing experience. But with the pain thing that
Absolutely.
I found interesting for myself is through not only like experiencing illness and like really
Mm.
difficult pain through that at points in my life, but even like an acute situation, like on a meditation retreat where you're sitting forever
Mm.
and like the pain in the hips or the knees or the back
Yeah.
come up, like to dive into it. And it is unbelievable, like when you're in a space of allowing that pain to be there and not running away from it, but moving toward it and into it with like what what you were talking about with curiosity to kind of
Yeah.
understand it. All of a sudden, like I had firsthand experience, you probably had this experience where that pain
Mhm.
all of a sudden, just like it flipped to the other side and became pure bliss. It was unbelievable. It was like an explosion
Yeah.
from like this excruciating pain to this
Yes.
unimaginable feeling of ecstasy
Wow.
through all my whole body. And just so seeing that, like that one experience like changed my life. So when I feel pain, of course I'm going to feel pain like a normal person, but I think I'm going to
Hmm.
pause a little bit more and I'm not going to
Yeah.
run away so quickly, and I'm going
The
to
moment that it becomes
yeah,
uncomfortable. And I like I thank you for sharing that. It's so powerful, right?
it
Because I think
is.
we tend to visualize opposite emotions as exactly what they are, opposite, like something like this, but I kind of visualize them on one thread. They're just on opposite ends. But the
Hmm.
moment we realize, like, oh, they're going to dissolve and meet somewhere in the middle,
Yeah.
right? Like in Yoga Nidra, we do that at a point in the practice where you come into the third eye and you're holding opposite emotions, and then you hold them first separately without judgment as best you can,
Yeah.
and then you hold them both together
Mm.
simultaneously. And then
Yes.
when you practice with consistency, it really comes off the mat with you in the sense that you can hold those opposing emotions with so much more grace and ease, and from that place of the witness
Yeah.
rather than attaching to one or the other.
Yeah,
So it's a really
exactly.
powerful practice to realize, like, oh yeah, they're opposites, but
Hmm.
they also at some point meet together and dissolve into
Yeah.
neutral.
Yeah, there's an inherent unity between all the, because any
Of
dualistic
course.
system is
Right.
you know what I mean, when you live in a dualistic binary system, like these things do not live in isolation of each other. One cannot
Right.
be without the other. I always like to
Exactly.
visualize them as like one coin and like a heads or a tails.
Right.
It's like, you know what I
Totally.
mean, it's like it's still one
Yeah.
thing, it's one process, like
Right.
hot cold, it's not
Right.
hot or cold, it's hot cold. It's one thing,
Right. Yeah.
and like you can
Yeah. Uh-huh.
experience, the
Mm.
binary nature of it. But I love what you're saying about holding, two different emotions together and
Mm.
seeing that unity between those feeling states. I know like that is maybe for a lot of people out there, that can be a really hard thing to like imagine, like what that could be like.
Yeah.
But it's not something you can intellectualize. Like we're using words, we're
Yeah.
trying to describe it,
Yeah.
but like it is an
That's why we make
experience.
art, right?
Exactly. That's what I was going to get to. It's like it's an experience. So like that's sort of a good segue like into your art making in terms of thinking about these things, especially like coming back to this idea of thinking about the invisible and like how we can bring the subtle sort of nuanced nature of experience that lies beneath the sort of detection of our base senses that still exists, like, and how do we
Yes.
bring that to light for other people. So I'm curious for you as an artist, like what are some methods or approaches that you bring to trying to not only exude that experience, but like also discover it for yourself in the making of your art?
Yeah, I love that question. And something I think about all the time and write about a lot too is, I mean, I feel like I weave meditation and artwork in together all the time, whether I meditate before I create or meditate kind of during. But I really view art making as a collaborative experience between me and whatever the medium it is that I'm working
Mm-hmm.
with. A lot of people will look at my abstract photography and think it's Photoshop because they are like these color fields, these like ethereal kind of like, yeah, just like fields of meditative color.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't. I hate Photoshop. I I only say that because I don't know how to use it and get frustrated sitting at the computer. My
Yeah.
husband has a retouching photo business. We met in art school together, but I
Oh,
was like, I'm going
cool.
to take the path of color theory and pushing the medium of photography and like,
Yeah.
figuring
Yeah.
things out that way.
Awesome.
But I always wanted to get more creative with like, well, how can I, instead of take a photo, right? Which there's nothing wrong with that. I clearly got my degree in photography, but
Yeah.
instead of taking a photo of something that exists, how can I make a photo? How can I work with the camera, the medium itself to create something less visible, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's this so I do a lot of long exposure when I'm working with my camera, and sometimes I'm photographing light or paper or corners of walls. It sounds
Mm-hmm.
crazy, but it's
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
it how I work. And the power of course, as an artist and a person choosing to create something, there's this intentionality, right? It's like, okay, I can control my actions in a sense. I know what colors, shapes, composition, and at the same time, there's this letting go because when you're thinking about a long exposure, and that's when, you're letting your camera instead of just click and it's right there,
Yeah.
it holds for like 30 seconds or a minute or more, 10 seconds, whatever you choose. But in that moment where the shutter is down and
Mm-hmm.
it's dark, right, for however long, and then finally opens and then your image appears, it's in that time where the magic happens because
Yeah.
that's where I let go. I'm not in control. The
Yeah.
light is in control, the camera is in control, the lens is in control. All these
Yeah.
other pieces of the medium are in control. And I
Yeah.
love that. I think that
Yeah.
reflects, it's a mirror of the spiritual practice.
Yeah.
I show up for it, but then I let go. I make a
Yes.
choice and then I surrender.
Yes.
So
I
that's why
love
I
that.
love that.
Yes.
And then I do a lot of ink on paper too, where it's like, yes, I use my photography and images, and it's kind of like a really wonky way to screen print, is how I would describe my process.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it depends on how much water, not enough water, how long I lay the paper down, um, all this stuff. And then it's when you pull back that piece of paper is where you see how the colors and paper work together. It's like I'm doing it, but I'm not. I
Yes.
am like, oh,
Yes.
it's a collab. I'm in total collaboration with the universe, with color, with paper. It's
Yes.
not just me, So
Yes.
that's
I
what
love
I
it.
just love about the process in general. Is like my art is spiritual
Yeah.
because it has this the same elements of my
Yeah.
practice, yoga nidra practice, all
I
that good
love that. I
stuff.
love how those things mirror and how you explain that so perfectly, because
Thank
that's
you.
exactly it. It's like you know what I mean? Like you're creating the conditions, you're making the
Right,
choice to enact
right.
this thing or to sit or to, to
Mm-hmm.
practice, to roll your mat out or sit on your cushion or to set
Mm-hmm.
the camera up, to play with the
That's
light,
it.
but then at the end of the day, like once you have those conditions set up, you have
Yeah,
to just let the practice or let the experience carry
yeah,
through and do its thing and
yeah,
let go of that. And I think
yeah.
that's such a beautiful like mirroring of those two
Thank
things
you.
through the way you're making
Yeah,
art. And I'm curious,
thank
like
you.
how, as you continue to evolve, how you can continue to push that, how those conditions that you set up can get
Yeah,
more and more like complex or interesting or stripped
yeah,
down or
yeah.
whatever, but like
Me
that
too.
same process is so fascinating. And I've always personally been really just blown away by photography as well. Like I feel like that was one of my real big entry points into my like owning my creativity. I was creative my whole life, you know, like I
Yeah.
drew as a kid my whole life. I was obsessed with drawing sharks
Love
and
it.
ocean
Nice.
creatures. Like I was always very in touch with my like creative side, but I never owned it, like in terms of like identifying as someone who like create something. It was just very natural for me
Right.
to do. But as I got older,
Mhm.
you know, and your ego kicks in adolescence and you
Mhm.
want to be cool or you want to be this or you want to be that,
Yeah.
you know, like the art was always like sneakily like pulling me.
Mm.
And it was a photography class, a
Yeah.
black and white photography
Oh,
class, like in the
nice,
dark room,
nice.
that
Yeah.
really just blew my mind. The magic of that process, the mysteriousness of that
Watching
process. Yeah.
watching your images come to life in the dark room.
Yeah. Going from
There
nothing
is
to
nothing
something.
like it. I miss dark room so much. There's
Yeah.
nothing like it. There's nothing
Yeah.
like it.
I
Yeah.
know. It's so
The
cool.
process is
It is, and
amazing.
it blows your mind. I feel like the more
Mhm.
we're in this digital age, and the more obsessed we are with our camera phones and stuff, I feel like the
Yeah.
more we need to dive into these tangible processes, these analog
Yeah.
processes. I used to
Mhm.
teach a, black and white class to high schoolers,
Oh,
and sadly,
amazing.
the dark room had to go because of
Mhm.
administrative stuff, buildings
Yep,
being
I
torn
know.
down, you
I
know,
know.
not rebuilding it. I
Yep.
don't want to get into it, but I was like, but when I taught that class, it was one of my favorite things to teach because it just blew kids' minds. They
Oh,
were like, what
yeah.
the hell? Like, Mr. Benson, I spent like weeks and weeks
Yeah.
on this. I love it so much. Da, da, da.
That's
Because it
so
slows
sweet,
you
and
down and all that. Do you
yes.
like, I know it's like hard to find dark rooms to be able to work in. Do you still get to
Mm.
go to a dark room from time to time? Or are you working mostly just
No.
digital just because of,
Mostly digital just
yeah.
because of, yeah, access. So I went to School of Visual Arts in New York City, and before that, I went to Nassau Community College in Long Island. And, you know, even in high school, I was in the dark room. That's where I learned. And I
Yeah.
remember even in like my senior year of high school, I was like, I hate digital. I don't want to learn digital. And then, you know, it's like you couldn't even help. You just got swept up
Yeah.
in the way the world was moving. And then it was like moving image and video became really popular. And it becomes a little bit challenging to, I'm going to put this in quotes, to try and keep up. But
Yeah.
to give yourself the permission, little permission slip to own what you love to do and let that
Yeah.
be enough without
Yeah.
feeling like you need to do every like trend or try to do everything unless
Yes.
it feels exciting to you.
Exactly. Right.
Just like what you said earlier, you know, we get older and like oh, you said it beautifully and I'm going to butcher it, but
No,
you were just
no.
like, you know, you have the tendency to like, you know, art kind of pulls you back in. It's like this magnet almost, right?
Yeah.
But it's like I find that we have to keep giving ourselves these little permission slips over time. I think it goes back to that meditation of like you forget and then you practice to remember and then you go through life
Yes.
again and it's this practice of forgetting, remembering. And it goes the same thing for us, like your
Yeah.
essence. We forget because we start to put on these masks, whether it's for work or family or just who you think you need to be.
Yeah.
But then we remember the more and more we practice stillness,
Yeah.
we come home to ourselves. And that could be through meditation, that could be through hiking in the woods, that could be whatever your idea of how you connect with your own heart and
Mhm.
intuition. But it's like that little permission slip to be still,
Yeah.
to let yourself define who you are without letting the world do that for you.
Yeah.
Whether it's like the social media you're trying to keep up or sell your art or whatever it is, I know how challenging that can be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, do I have to like do all these reels and blah blah blah? And I just won't do it because I'm like, well, it doesn't feel good. I don't
Yeah.
want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's just this constant remembering who we truly are, I think.
Yeah.
And being courageous enough to do that, even when the answer isn't always clear, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Well, this idea of remembering is so crucial because actually I think the term mindfulness, where that comes from,
Mhm.
the root of the Sanskrit term for mindfulness or the Pali term means to remember, to recollect, to
Mhm.
remember. Like, and so it's
Right,
like essentially when you're mindful, when you're present, you're remembering this, that you're alive in this moment and you're experiencing
right.
that right there
Yes, I
instantaneously.
love that.
It is so
Yes.
important, but like
Mm.
I was kind of riffing on this today. I did like a little post on my Instagram about like, thinking about this idea of like memory and remembering. And I feel like for
Yeah.
me, like that is such a powerful experience when it comes to relationships with something that you could deem as like a real truth or a real deep
Mm.
insight. Like someone says something and you're like, ding, 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 that resonates.
Uh-huh.
I get it. And to me, that feeling feels more akin to like a memory or a remembering than it does as like a new knowing. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like this,
Oh, I
I
love it.
feel like we're in this process, us on this planet as living conscious beings, like in this process of trying to remember the truth
Mhm.
of like what it is we're doing here, who it is we are outside of like
Mhm.
what you're saying, like what other people
Yeah.
tell you, because I feel like a lot of
Yeah.
our identity gets wrapped up in what's been told to us about
Mm.
ourselves. I think
Mhm.
about this a lot in relation to like raising kids, like
Sure.
trying to be really thoughtful about like the stories and that I tell my children about who they are.
Mhm.
Cause like you can't help but to like, you're the best, you're the, I
Right?
mean, like in everything they do. But like I also
You're
want to like,
perfect. Yeah.
yeah, which they are, which is they
Right.
exactly are. And there's never, oh, you know what I mean? But it's really interesting when you like dive into your like, because I know I can just tell you've been doing this for a while and you're deeply invested in self inquiry. And you start to peel back the layers, when you start to really
Yes.
dismantle these narratives of who we
Right.
thought we were, and you start to
Yes.
realize where those narratives came from, they came
Exactly.
from outside of you, it really like sets off a whole chain reaction of like
Yes.
insight into
And
like
even if
what is
it
beyond that.
Yes, and even if it did come from you, is that a current truth? Or is
Mm-hmm.
that just something, it's, this repetitive loop of thought or story that you're still living from but doesn't feel good anymore?
Yeah,
And that's why a huge part of I teach a yoga nidra and creative expression like 8-week course, and I've been doing that since like 2020,
that's so
and
cool.
it's been amazing because it's all about, I'm not telling anybody what to do or what to think or about themselves or anything. It's about question. It's about curiosity. It's
Mm-hmm.
We're going to practice self inquiry through movement, through meditation, through yoga nidra, through journaling, through art as therapy.
Yeah,
We're practicing moving what's going on in your inner world into external expression for clarity.
yeah,
Because where am I now? And how can I move where I want to be? How can I bring those two closer together? Where
yeah,
I am now and what truly feels like is true in my heart. How can I bridge that gap?
yes,
Um, so
it's
yeah,
so
the process of
crucial.
self inquiry is huge because
Yes,
it's teaching your kids, your students, your whoever, even yourself, right? Curiosity.
yes,
It's something that we have
exactly.
to teach, I think, again and again. It's
I
like to
know.
open the mind back up to focus more on the process
Yeah,
rather than the outcome, which I'm
exactly.
a huge advocate for.
For sure, because I think this
Yeah.
world that we live in is becoming so increasingly complex. And I think a lot of it is predicated upon results. It's predicated, on like achieving some final end, and it's
Mhm.
also predicated on this false sense of knowing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like this sense
Mhm.
that like this culture that we've created up to this point is the end all be all of any culture that's ever lived on the planet. We're the most advanced beings in the universe. We're the most advanced
Right.
species on this planet. You know what I mean? The hubris of the
Yeah.
human species is revealing
Sure.
itself big time, and so it's like getting back to like
Yeah.
curiosity is like also like
Mm.
getting back to this space of humility, of being able to
Mhm.
recognize that maybe I don't know, maybe I don't
Yeah.
understand fully, maybe there's something I'm missing here, and
Yeah.
it's okay to hit the rewind button and go back and
Mhm.
see like where those gaps might have been
Mm.
created so that you can shore them up. Because I think that that's, for me, one of the most beautiful things about life is the inherent mystery with it all.
Me
The
too.
magic that's there
Yeah.
between the sentences, between the layers of what we kind of think is real or not real. Like this sort of liminal space of unknowing is such like a powerful space of possibility. And I think as artists and people who are creatives of all kinds, understand that a little bit more viscerally because we embody that every day when we go to the
Yeah.
studio. The
It's
mystery of like,
very
what
true.
the hell is going to happen?
What am I?
Like,
Yeah. What am I doing? What am I doing today? What is this
exactly.
blank canvas that could either be really intimidating or infinite possibilities, right?
Yeah,
But there's
exactly.
such a power to saying, I don't know.
Yes, it's
Right?
so
Like there's
powerful.
if you think you know everything, I kind of imagine it's like this closed fists of like there nothing can get in and nothing can get out because you
Mm,
think the mind is so closed, right? But when you say you don't know, there's
yeah,
so much opportunity for new ideas to come in, for
yeah,
you to feel free enough to explore. But if
yeah,
we think we know everything, it just holds you down and keeps you really small. So I
definitely.
think
It
there's so
does.
much power to just being, yeah, curious and like what you were saying earlier. I think it's so funny too how there's like this collective energy sometimes where I'm like, oh, I'm putting something out tomorrow where I'm talking a lot about memory too.
Yeah.
Like you were sharing about
Yeah,
memory
the
before,
sinks,
and
man.
it
Yeah.
really thinks it's crazy.
Yeah.
And, even just like I said, like the human experience I view as a collage, I think memory is the same way, right? Like,
Yeah.
when you try to think and you remember something and you can kind of piece things together, and it's like, is it the truth or is
Yeah.
it a bunch of truths kind of molded together to
Yeah.
form your memory of truth? So it's just a very individual experience. I think that's
Yeah.
why I love abstract art, because I'm not telling you what to see.
Yeah.
I want you to tell you what you see,
Yeah, exactly.
like based on your personal makeup of experience, perspective, everything of who you are. That's what you're going to see this as.
Yeah, it's like a
And there's
mirror
power to
almost.
the,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a power
Yeah.
to the individual story and unique way of
Yeah.
seeing. It's the difference between looking and seeing
Yes,
in my
exactly.
mind. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, because seeing as opposed to looking is like a one-dimensional process,
Surface
whereas seeing
level,
is multi-dimensional.
like 5D.
Exactly, exactly. But no, it's so important, like with the, especially when it comes to abstract work, it can be really challenging for people because I think this reverts back to what we were talking about earlier about being able to like have the awareness to feel the subtle reactions or responses you have to certain stimulus. So you're looking
Yeah.
at abstract work, sometimes like you hit a wall of just like of
Mhm.
intimidation because you think you're supposed to
Mhm.
have like a concrete answer. There's like
Right. Right.
it's like a math equation and there's only one right answer. It's like no, it's like the actually
Yes.
opposite of that. It's like you're
Yes.
supposed to be in touch with what it is you're actually
Right.
responding
Like there's
to, and that's
there's
the answer.
yes, 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 yes. A million
Yeah.
times yes, right? It's mic drop, because it's not about right or wrong. It's like, what do you see? How do you feel? And that's correct, right?
Exactly.
And it might change. You could look at it in
Yeah.
a month or a year or whatever, and the way you see will change. Who you are will
Yes.
change. And in the beginning of 2020, when I was like, okay, the world is starting over, so can I.
Yeah.
We're shifting, right? Um, I kind of came up with this mantra that I share a lot in classes, and it's something that I remind myself too as someone who is always seeking outside of myself for answers and
Hmm.
validation, or just like, oh, everyone else knows better, right?
Hmm.
Um, it's I am worthy of my full attention, and
Yeah.
that is a full practice
Wow.
when you
Yes.
are looking at what you're a really
Wow.
tiny choice, right? Like
Yeah.
it's something like, oh, what do you want to eat for dinner? Oh, I don't know, you choose. It's like, take a moment, pause, and I'm saying that as someone who never knows what they want to eat for dinner, right?
Yeah. Right. We're like,
I'm easy to go with the flow, but it's like, check in. There's this, you're reframing, you're reminding yourself, I am worthy of my full attention.
man, it's
What do I
beautiful.
think about this? Thank you. And
Yeah.
it's been such a powerful affirmation for, I know, a lot of people too. It's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, how
I'm gonna take that
often.
one along with
Yeah,
me because
please
it's so
do, right?
crucial.
It's like, how often do you look over, your own opinions, your own wisdom, and if you're doing it in the tiny choices just in your everyday life, how much how disconnected we can become from ourselves. And it
Totally.
really is a an act of courage to tune back in
It
again and again and again.
It
Yeah.
is. It is. Yeah. Over and over, starting over
Over and
again. But
over.
that's such a beautiful way of like framing it. Like immediately when you said that, my whole body just agreed with you. Like that is so true. Like each one of us is worthy of our full attention toward what's happening. Because
Yeah.
that's where life is.
Yeah.
It's in the immediacy of every moment. And it's so funny.
Mm.
Like we're equipped with these incredible minds that have the capacity to project into the future or to retreat into the past. And those are very great. Those are like superpowers. But like it's almost like we don't know how to harness these superpowers and they run the show, this sort of rumination, projection, fantasy
Mm.
kind of situation that we're in.
Yeah.
And so just tuning in and just bringing your full awareness to like what you're feeling, the sensations on your skin, the feeling of the circulation in
Mhm.
your body, right? The
Yeah.
feeling of like hunger or the feeling of satisfaction, the feeling of
Right.
like a burgeoning thought versus the quieting mind, like whatever it is, but like
Mhm.
being in tune enough to like feel where you're at in any given moment.
Exactly.
Because I think it's almost like it's like when you do that, I like imagine it's like all of your power is being collected and concentrated. And then
Mhm.
from that place, it can be projected with its full capacity into whatever it is you
Mm.
want that's there
Yeah.
with you in that moment, right? That's
Mm.
in an alignment with that moment. But it's like we've been saying over and over again, it's just a practice. It's hard to
It's a
do,
practice.
and
Yeah.
it's like something we always have to come back to. And for me, a phrase that I like to use, a hashtag I like to use with like my work that kind of comes
Yeah.
from a lot of dialogues I've had with a lot of my friends is the
Yeah.
practice is the purpose. Like that is what it's
Yes.
about. It's
Mhm.
like, is
I
the
love
repeat of the
that.
practice. Like that's what it's
I'm taking
about.
that one.
Yeah, it's
That's
good
really
though, but it
good.
is like because that's where change happens. That's where everything happens when you're fully invested in that process of doing. And so I think as not only as a teacher, you're obviously very gifted at communicating these things, but also through your artwork, it's very interesting. Like I would love like just looking at your website, like seeing all your work. I want to hear you talk more about like those images because I think
Yeah.
now like having even talked to you for just like 50 minutes or whatever, like I want to go back and look at them again and kind
Yeah.
of understand them again. I have a
Yeah.
question about like practical
Mhm.
things as an artist. Like when
Sure.
you exhibit your work, when you show it, like
Mhm.
what's like an ideal format for you for your photography? Because that's
Yeah.
also becoming an interesting place too, where photography is kind of moving outside of its traditional presentations.
Great question. So, when I was in college, my really good friend and I, we would always do shows together. And with my work, it has to be, or at least in my mind, I need it to be large because it's about immersive. It's like I want to feel like
Yeah.
you are in it.
Mhm.
So I used to make these like 6 to 8 foot prints, and they were like the whole wall, and I would like
Wow.
Velcro them to the wall, like ruin the walls. I'd have to stay and like spackle them for like hours.
Oh no.
And then I started doing like some projections, and here in Portland at one of the studios I teach at every weekend, I do a yoga and sound bath class with my artwork projected in the space.
Cool.
So it's amazing because it becomes this like integrated form of healing, right? And this like big like cocoon
Yeah.
of like inner inquiry and
Yeah.
traveling of inward exploration.
Yeah.
So I've printed my photos on metal too. I actually am looking at one right there. I'll
Cool.
send you a photo. And it's one of those self portraits. And in a lot of the black space, the negative space, it's cool because you can see yourself. So
Oh,
it becomes
nice.
this like mirrored experience of like you can see me, but you're also seeing you in this
Cool.
reflective material. So I love it.
Yeah.
So it's challenging in the sense of, when you're working with photography, you have to print, and there's so much more to kind of show your work because it's
Hmm.
so on screen, or it's easy to like post online.
Yeah.
It's less easy. It's more challenging, right? To like show artwork in context all the time, because then I'd have to order a lot of huge prints, and
Yeah.
that gets expensive and all
Oh
that
yeah, it
stuff. So
does.
it's been a total uh, interesting hurdle for me to even figure out, because when you get it printed on metal, that's expensive too. And
Definitely.
but it's so beautiful, and I love doing that. And I'm also more hands-on, where I've been trying to think of, like, I love the projections, because you can
Yeah.
fully immerse yourself in it, and you can kind of see your shadow as you're practicing in front of it. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
um but yeah, I'm still kind of in this like gestation process
Yeah.
of like, what is like a really cool way that I can even print it myself on something,
Hmm.
instead of sending it out, because I like the hands-on process. I think that's
Yeah.
why I started leaning into ink on paper and painting a little bit more, because I was like, well, I really I like the tactile experience.
Yeah.
But with my photography, definitely large and in charge, big print, sometimes on
I love
metal
it.
and
Yeah.
sometimes projected in a
Yeah.
space. Because, leading meditation held in the atmosphere of different colors creates such a vivid, amplified experience,
Yeah. That's amazing. No, I mean, it's
Yeah.
such an important thing, especially as a photographer. Like, there are so many limitations in terms of printing because, again, you could,
Mhm.
those large prints, they get so expensive,
So
especially like on the
expensive.
metal and all of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool that you're thinking about other ways of doing it, or other ways of like printing your photography by hand at home. Yeah,
Yeah.
just exploring different kind of materials. Even like, like you could explore like printing from like a normal printer, like an inkjet printer, onto those iron-ons that you do for like t-shirt
Oh,
graphics,
yeah,
but then like
true. That
iron
would be
them
kind of
onto
sick.
stuff and then
Yeah.
paint with them. I mean, who knows? Like,
That'd be kind of
it's
cool.
kind of
Yeah.
like, as a way to
True.
like bring a tangible process into the photography, but you'll figure it out. I think that's the
Exactly.
journey of
It,
an artist, is
that's the
like,
journey, right?
yeah, like
That's
evolving the
the
way
journey.
that you can share what you do, because I think the context of how you experience art can be equally as important as the art itself, especially when you're putting
Totally.
together an exhibition or a show. You want to be super thoughtful about how you kind of charge those spaces where people are going to be
Yeah.
experiencing these things. I think
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
amazing that you bring your art into your sessions with the yoga nidra,
Yeah.
or even asana
Yeah.
sessions or meditation sessions. Like,
Yeah.
like bringing that kind of activity even outside of the yoga studio to a museum or to a
Oh,
gallery,
yeah. That's the
could
goal.
is a really cool way of like bridging those gaps between like
Right.
the experience of the art and like kind of what's happening in the actual space of experiencing the
Mhm.
art. Could be like a
Yeah.
really interesting relationship.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just you're
You're
obviously
bridging the
young
gap,
and on that journey, and like it's going to find its way through.
Thank
It's
you.
going to
Yeah,
find its
thank
way
you.
through. But I think it's
Mhm.
really interesting just learning about you and your art, and want to go back and look at it. I'm curious,
Yeah.
and I wanted to also circle back to how we initially started this conversation about
Yeah.
the aura migraines. Like, have you found
Mhm.
healing in that like, do you still get them like at frequencies, like the same frequency you
Mm.
did, or like what has your journey been like in terms of healing on a personal level with that sort of
Yeah.
experience?
Yeah, so they used to be, I mean, growing up as a kid, all throughout, I would say, honestly, until I moved to Portland and found some answers about my health, about 7 or 8 years ago, they're pretty bad. Like, I would have
Mm,
to, you can't work. Like, I would have to call out of work. I used to bartend and waitress, and 14-hour shifts of just
yeah.
like go, 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 go. You are on, you're on, you're on. And sometimes I'd have to still work anyway. And I think that is, it creates such a uh, frustrating thing to explain to someone how much pain you're in when you look
Yeah.
fine,
Right.
when you've literally just had to learn how to deal and move through and with the pain.
Yeah.
So there used to be a lot more challenges with that. I'm no longer in the service industry, but I did that for like 11 years, like a really long
Yeah.
time. Was just on my feet and 14-hour shifts of, you're not like sitting down to have a proper
Oh
meal,
yeah.
and
No,
you're just
I used to
like,
work in a restaurant for some years. I know it's
my
hard work.
God,
Yeah.
you are just hustling. You're like not
Mhm.
even thinking. You're just like, and that's,
Mm.
I think there's a beautiful part of that. Like there's the community, the connection aspect. I was always really good at working in service because I just love people, and like I
Yeah,
love the being able to connect and being of service in any kind of way. I just think
for
I was
sure.
always kind of meant to follow that
Yeah,
path too.
yes. You found another way to do it
Now,
though. Yeah,
yeah,
which is
now I'm
good.
not like slinging nachos and tequila. It's more like,
Meditation and
which is,
yoga
listen,
nidra,
yeah,
pratyahara,
yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Exactly.
Exactly. Nothing wrong with the first, but
No, not at all. I did it for
it
years.
served me a
Yeah.
lot too, and
Yeah,
I
I've
loved
learned a
it.
lot through that. Yeah.
Yeah, but now these days I get them way less, but I used to get them like 10 times a month where it was like
Wow.
there was like more time where I was in some sort of pain, because and that's the thing too, people are like, it's just a headache, right? And it's like, no, because for me too, the days following migraine, usually 2 or 3, my speech is really jumbled, so it's like my brain and language, they don't talk to each other quick enough. So when
Yeah,
I have to be my whole job is talking, right? Whether it's through teaching or at the time waitressing. And but even now, like when I get a migraine and I have to teach, it's like I can feel myself either before or after the migraine. If I feel that disconnect between brain and words, I'm like, okay, either a migraine's coming or it's in like the after effects of
yeah,
having been in that really intense pain kind of
man.
period. So there's a lot of big effects around it outside of just like the head piece,
Exactly. Yeah.
that has been helpful even just to like know about myself. So I think
Right.
there's a lot more clarity, a lot more grace giving even just to myself, like,
Yeah.
okay, this is your time to rest. Like
Yep.
this is your time to rest. Take that time to be still, whatever it is. If you need to sleep all day and not be on a screen, which can feel really challenging when that is a big part of my work, is to
Yeah,
be visible and out there. And it's like the more I give myself permission to rest, it helps give permission for other people to do the same and to
yeah,
honor what they need to. So I
definitely.
try to talk about that as much as I can. But yeah, I mean, it still influences my work for sure. I don't
Yeah,
get them as bad or as intense. So I kind of use I mean, I can drop into meditation or nidra in a much deeper way now. I think because
for
of that,
sure.
it's like I can close my eyes and instantly everything goes right here.
Yeah.
Like it's so much I feel this way more than I could feel like my legs or my feet or anything in the
Wow.
base of my body. It's like the whole head just lights up and
Yeah.
I'm there. And I think it was because of like the portal from the migraines and that
Yeah.
experience. So I really don't regret that, or hate on the migraines for being a painful part of my existence, because they've just inspired
It's
my purpose
beautiful.
so much and my
Yeah.
path.
They've
And
been teaching you
yeah, they've
something.
been teaching me
Yeah.
and
There's something.
activating this
Yeah.
intuition and inner vision.
Yeah.
And I think it's just been really special.
That's really interesting. Because like there's a lot of like mystery still around like why certain people get migraines, where they come from.
Yeah.
And I am no doctor, so I don't know anything, but like I have my like thoughts about potentials of things, and like just being someone who's like deeply interested in metaphysics and sort of
Mhm.
like spiritual relationships with energy and other dimensions and all
Yeah.
these things, just through my own weird whirlwind life experience. I wonder sometimes it's like there's so much energy that you have the capacity to hold there, that it's almost like there's, think about it like a light bulb, like you have like a 60-watt light bulb, but like you're
Mm.
getting like 1,000 watts into it.
Right.
And so it's
Right.
like it can't handle the amount of energy that's coming through. So the only thing to do is to find ways to channel the energy down and to
Yes.
spread it down to the
Yes.
base, to the root chakra, to all of
Right.
them, and spread that energy down. Stand on the earth, hug a tree, like
Yeah.
ground. Like,
Yes.
have you ever done that? Like when you're in like a crazy
Oh,
migraine, like the grounding could probably be really
that's
helpful.
I think I will try to go outside next time. It always just depends on the time of year. Like
Yeah.
even the summer can be a big trigger for my migraines. Like if I go outside and it's too bright, it's like goes right here. But
Oh,
I love this I think as artists, right, we have a tendency to be all up here and like the ideas, the vision, like float me out into outer space, and that's where I want to land, right? Like I can tap into the everything up here with such ease, right?
Yeah.
And then, but here's the thing, it's like we can want to hang out up here all day,
Yeah.
but if it's not grounded,
Yeah.
and we want to have this reality where, I know I'm speaking for myself here and maybe some other people, but
Yeah.
as an artist who's very visual, I'm like, okay, but I want to put myself out there more and develop the website, or make posts or photograph my art or whatever it is. It's not going to happen from up here.
Yeah.
Right? You move the intangible down
Yeah.
into the tangible, and
Exactly.
the tangible also rises. And
Yep.
so it's just that like connection. And I think we forget because we just want to be all up
Hmm.
in the kind of creating magic, because it's
Exactly.
amazing. Like, why not? But
Exactly.
if we're not grounded, I mean,
Hmm.
without that steady foundation, we don't have the wings to expand. So we need
Exactly.
to continue to build the support system for ourselves to
Exactly.
ground that vision into a tangible
Yeah.
reality. Of course, you lose some essences of things when you birth them, maybe, of like,
Yeah.
oh, this isn't how I saw it in my head.
Yep, exactly.
But
There's always going to be
you know
something lost in translation, but that's the material experience,
that's it,
Yeah.
exactly. And just remembering, like,
Yeah.
okay, it still exists out here, but
Yeah.
there's this balance, right, of rooting, rising, tangible, intangible,
Exactly. Yeah.
and
The roots
they're
go
connected.
deep so
Yeah,
that the branches can go high.
that's
And it's like,
it.
or like the bridging of like heaven and earth, like bridging those two
Mhm.
things together, like this sort of
Yeah.
alchemical
Yes.
process of like raising
Yes.
consciousness is like not all, it's not all the Ajna chakra, or you know what I mean?
Right.
It's not all about
Yeah.
that. It's really about all
It's
of
all the
them.
work that you don't want to do in between.
Yes.
Where the magic
Exactly.
is.
But that for me personally has been very transformational for my own practice, but also for my physical health, is to be really aware of the energy centers below the heart, not just the ones above the heart, and treat them all the same is important,
Well,
but
because they
I
work together, they're a system, right? And
exactly.
you know, there's the energy centers that connect us to the universe, being, the crown. And if we're just talking about the seven main energy centers,
Yeah,
the crown,
exactly.
obviously, and the root, obviously, those are the ones: earth, sky, universe, community, all that good stuff. And then there's the ones more in the middle where they're really inward. Like I call the solar plexus, the heart, and the throat the bridge of authenticity. Like
Mm,
those three are,
yeah.
it's like personal power, heart's deepest desire, and then how we communicate that in the world. And
Yeah.
I think, though, and obviously, the sacral chakra is all about the creative expression and flow and
For
relationship,
sure.
self and others. But I feel like those core three have so much to do with, again, it goes back to my mantra of being worthy of our full attention, and how
Yeah.
much attention we give to that affects how much we let ourselves be ourselves on the outside.
Yes, it's so true. I mean, yeah, because we have to be able to have that sense of like confidence without like the sense of like egoism, like what,
Right.
and so it's like it's a subtle space to be in, or like the space of like the open-hearted, compassionate
Mm-hmm.
nature without being an idiot,
Right.
without like misusing our
It's
compassion, in a
it's the
state of,
balance,
yeah.
right? Like, because
Hmm.
sometimes we're depleted and sometimes we can be over, right?
Yes.
If I mean, we there's protection around the heart physically for a reason,
Yeah,
right? Like there's
exactly.
it can become, if we wall it up completely, then not only can nothing get in, but nothing can get out.
Exactly. Like you were saying with the
So
closed fist, right? Like,
right,
yeah.
exactly. So there's this way, like you were saying, confidence without arrogance.
Yeah.
Or, and it's just in people's posture too. You could see, like, when people make themselves smaller, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
how can we stand tall in our power, vibrance, and purpose?
Yeah.
That just happens the more we pay attention to ourselves, the more we give
Exactly.
ourselves permission to shine our unique light in the world
Yeah.
without worrying about who's judging us for it.
Yes. I mean, that's a big part of the game too, especially for us artists out there who, I mean,
Yep.
I've I'm a very sensitive person. I've always been very sensitive. And I think
Yeah, me
most
too.
artist types are very sensitive, but we have to develop a thick skin, and we also have to develop the ability to take feedback, also, and the ability to like not also like get attached to like other people's judgments and opinions.
Exactly.
Right. But like we also don't want to be so like detached from it that we can't like allow other people
Right.
to guide us too. It's a
Right.
weird
Right.
balance, but I think
Yeah.
if my whole life is ran by the opinions of others, it's going to drive me into a ditch. And so I have to
Mhm.
find that balance of like
Yeah.
allowing people to think what they want to think and still live my
Yeah.
truth and be who I am. Because
Exactly.
people
Yes.
are always going to judge. I'd still judge all the time. I'm just trying to be
Mhm.
aware of those judgments
Right.
so I don't act on them,
Right. Yes.
or to like diffuse them, to see the delusion from which these judgments are arising and be able to laugh at it and then be able to diffuse it
Mhm.
away. But it's an
Right.
incredible
Yeah.
journey that we're on. And I love that we can connect. I
Truly.
mean, we're diving deep into a lot of
Me too.
amazing things
I
today,
know. I know.
and it's one of the key takeaways that I really appreciate is, as an artist, like, this is an art podcast, but we talk about all things around surrounding that.
Oh yeah.
But this mirroring of your spiritual practice and your art
Mhm.
practice, like this is an incredible thing that you've like discovered. And like, I want to just encourage you to strive on and continue to
Thank
explore
you.
that, because I think that's such a
Mhm.
beautiful way of framing your process as an artist, but also just as a human being in this world. So I just want to thank
Thank
you for
you.
everything
Oh,
you're
thank
doing, all of your
you.
teaching, your artwork. Everyone out there, just check the links in the show notes to Allie's Instagram or webpage. You do a lot of online things too, right? Do you
I
offer online
do.
courses? And so
Yes.
retreats,
Yes.
all sorts of workshops related to all these things we talked about today.
Yes.
So please check it out. I think you're going to be an incredible resource for lots of people who are on this journey that we're all on. Whether we know it or not, we're all on the
Yes.
spiritual journey.
Oh, thank you so much.
So thank you just so much for your time today. It's an amazing conversation, Allie. So
You too. Thank you so, so much.
yeah,
It's always so wonderful to just connect with like-minded people and inspire one another on the
yeah,
path. Thank
exactly. And
you.
be able to share it out like we can with the internet that we have at our fingertips. So
Yes.
lots of love to everybody out there. Thank you, Allie. And we'll
Thank
talk soon.
you.
Okay. All right. Peace.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for tuning into this episode of Concerning the Spiritual and Art. If you like what we're doing here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you can stay in touch and in tune with all the amazing offerings that we're going to be bringing to this channel. Thanks again for all your support. Super grateful, and excited to bring more content your way. Peace, y'all.